Leadership, 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 success, success, success. Hi, my name is Jonathan Medina. I'm America's #1 youth motivator. I'm your teacher, I'm your coach, I'm your friend, and I'm your teammate. Today we have an amazing guest. But before we get to her, just want you to know, go to freegiftfromjonathan.com and learn how you can receive a free copy of the Student Leadership Playbook. So today's episode is sponsored by the Student Leadership Playbook, the #1 book on Amazon on student leadership. But today, our guest is Sophia Silva. She is the valedictorian of her high school. She is the state president of Texas BPA, that's Business Professionals of America, as well as she is the regional, she's a regional ambassador for the Rio Grande Valley League that's leading.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Hi,
Can you
Sophia.
hear me?
Nice to meet you too. So I just let everybody know about all your amazing accomplishments. I let them know how you are the valedictorian. I let them know how you are the state president, how you're a regional ambassador. But can you tell us how you first got started in student leadership?
Okay, so my freshman year, I knew or I'd heard from a senior the previous year that it's best to join as many things as you're interested in so that once you kind of decide the next year you can be in the things that are you're actually willing to dedicate the most time to. So that's why I did my freshman year. I joined HOSA, BPA, RTV Lead, and as many clubs as I could and found any interest in. And then from there, I found out that BPA was that main thing that became that #1 priority. And so after my freshman year, a lot of the members who were in BPA had left. And so my sophomore year, I ran to be the president of the chapter. And that kind of began that streak of then going for regional president and then this year going for state president. And so that's how I kind of transitioned into that. And then in other clubs and organizations, it's just working with all of the teachers, counselors to promote business, CTSOs in the school and to encourage students to be part of different activities that they offer at our school.
Now, how did you build a relationship with that older student that gave you that advice to join as many clubs as possible? How did you build
Oh,
that
for that,
relationship?
it was just a random girl at a tour whenever we went to go visit the campus. So it was just, oh, that seems kind of smart. I should probably try that. So I took that advice whenever I was there.
Yeah, so I was like the opposite. I wanted to be a part of all these clubs, but I was so afraid to actually participate, so afraid to go in. How did you feel going into all of these different clubs for the first meeting for the first time?
I think a lot of them, it was weirder if I had a lot of underclassmen people were in my grade that I hadn't talked to since like eighth grade year because that whole gap in the summer is just kind of weird going back to them. So it's like, oh, okay, hi, like just nice little pleasantries. And then um, I think even for BPA, it felt very distanced because a lot of them were seniors. And besides just saying hello, like small talk, I hadn't gotten to know any of them because a lot of the meetings were kept really short. So then the biggest impact was whenever we went to the state conference. And then there, I really got to know all of them because we're spending that whole 5 days together without any like parents and going and doing fun stuff. So um, that definitely changed that perspective.
Yeah, so you were a freshman the first time you went to conference, is that correct?
Oh, yes.
Awesome, awesome. Well, I definitely love that. I didn't start going to conferences until I was a little bit older in high school, but I'm super big on going to conferences. How would you say that going to conference, aside from like you getting to know all these people, what's another way that conferences over the years has had a big impact on you?
I think the biggest impact starting high school was, oh, there's a lot of freedom here because, I mean, even with a few advisors, there's still a lot of kids going around, and there's only so much that they can do to make sure that you're in this place, and having that guardianship over you the whole time. So, with that new freedom, it was okay. So now you have the freedom to go and meet new people, talk to other people, and kind of go and explore and see what there is to offer at these places. And as long as you do that in the proper way, and of course, like safe and all that, then I think it's just such an amazing thing to have. And as I got a little bit older and in the later years of high school, um, I mean, I guess my later years of high school have been COVID. So that's just kind of been working with people to do more dedicated tasks and be the leader on that team instead of somebody who's there to explore and find new things.
Awesome, awesome. I absolutely love that advice. Now, you had someone give you some advice when you were first starting to get into leadership. You already mentioned that the young student, she gave you the advice of joining all the clubs, or at least going to see them all your first year. What would be some advice that you would give to somebody who was just getting started in student leadership? Maybe they're just starting high school or they just want to join a club for the first time. What would be your advice?
I would say go and talk to people. I mean, I know I have this one introduction. I just go up to everybody, "Hi, I'm Sophia," and shake their hand. And the best way to get to know people is to ask them questions because I realize a lot of people really like talking about themselves. Even if they don't present that information like forthright, you just start asking people questions. So, what's your background? Asking one of the weirdest questions, and people are usually kind of thrown back by it, but they appreciate it. I ask people if they're happy. And at first they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, okay, well, are you happy? What's good in your life? What's bad in your life? They're like, oh, okay, well, and then we just start talking about that. And that gets to a deeper level of who they are as a person rather than who they're used to presenting themselves as. Because I think a lot of times they're very different in who you would like to be known as rather than who you are on the inside. And so I think the best way to get into leadership and start working towards those different goals is to really get to know the people that you're around, whether that's your constituents, the other officers, advisors that you're with. And once you can do that, then you're able to build those friendships that lead you to greater places.
No, so what has been one of your favorite? Tell me a story about a time that happened where you asked someone about them and their happiness level.
Well, I've had some people who are, oh yeah, I'm happy. Like they still try and make it very presenting not a fake self of them, but something who how they want to be perceived as. I've had other people who go into full life stories tell me about everything that's happened with their parents and those relationships. That's another great question. Who's your favorite parent? Like, do you like your mom or dad more? Why? And so I've had people go into a little bit more like kind of darker stories about um, different things relating to depression, anxiety, um, and just getting to know people on that level as well. But a lot of times you also get to know the really great things about their life, what makes them happy. And so spending time with their family and a lot of things that you realize that they're not devoting the time to those things that they really love. So maybe they do love spending time with their mom or their dad, but often they're out hanging out with their friends or they're watching Netflix, doing things that separate them from what they truly want to prioritize.
Yeah, absolutely. That's actually kind of leads me into how I got started in my side of things. I was a regional leader in a student leadership organization, and I had sponsored a speaker to go do school assemblies in South Texas, where you're from. So I sponsored a speaker to come down and speak to about 10,000 students at different schools. And as I drove him around, he asked me about my parents. He didn't just ask me, "Oh, how are things going?" And I would have said my generic response. I have friends that make fun of me. I always say great twice. So I'm like, oh, great, great, or awesome, awesome. And it just comes out of me. Like I don't even try to do it now. It's just something that I automatically throw out. But he asked me about my parents. And so then I had to like, oh, well, do you mean my grandfather who raised me? And he told me, well, tell me more about that. And I started telling him these stories and he thought, oh, you should go speak all across the country with me. And so I started speaking with him. And now it led me to where done over 1,000 schools and student leadership organizations, wrote books. But it all started from someone asking me something very similar to what you just mentioned, Sophia. So I
That's
think you're
wonderful,
right
though.
on point right there. Now,
And
what?
yeah, so many people have wonderful stories to tell, and because I mean, something got them to where they are now. So, such beautiful things. What were you gonna say?
I was going to ask, what is a mistake that you would tell people to avoid?
Well, a few things I've learned either from actions other people did or from myself. Um, the first thing, do not ever talk bad about um, anybody in your club, your advisors, the people that you're working with, any of the other members. I think it's not worth it. And anything that you know can get back to other people. It's not going to help you in whatever you choose to do in your goals later on. It's not going to help you then to vent or start getting all this out unless it's something that you find as a concern and something that you want to bring up in that fashion. I think it's something to definitely avoid and stay away from. Um, Make sure that you're respecting your advisors. So if they say, okay, we're going to do this, questioning it is okay, starting that initial thing. But once it's okay, this is set, get on board and be a part of their team rather than trying to go against them and create that kind of break in that relationship because it's so important to work with your advisors and superiors to make sure that these goals are getting pushed forward properly because these are the people that you need to make all of this happen. And the last thing is don't be um, too certain about what's going to happen. So I know there was a girl my freshman year because she was one of the only other people who's an underclassman running for different positions in BPA. And she was like, "Oh yeah, I'm easily gonna get president," all this stuff. And I was like, "Okay, like I'm not gonna start being there, like trying to fight or trash talk. That's just not my personality." Um, but obviously that didn't happen. I think that's something that make sure that you know, even though you can be confident in yourself and know your abilities, don't ever try and predict what's gonna happen before it does. And so I think that's one big thing to make sure that you stay humble and stay um, not in your place, but where you ought to be before you know what's going to happen.
Yeah, actually, I absolutely did the same thing as your friend did when I was in high school. There was one organization that I had already planned out what we were going to do, and I didn't really campaign because I just assumed I was going to win the election, and so I made all these plans about what I was going to implement as the president of the club, and everyone voted against me, and I was like, oh, okay. I guess I'll be a volunteer and help, but I was imagining that I was going to lead the charge on this. Um, and so I've done that same exact thing where I just didn't, or I assumed, at a certain level of certainty that I was going to win the election. So I've made that mistake for sure myself.
Oh
Uh,
yeah, I have to.
Now, tell me how a coach or a mentor has helped you along the way.
I think one big role, my advisor, Laura Maldonado, so she's the BPA advisor of our chapter at school. And throughout this whole process, she's the one who's been encouraging me, helping me, making sure that I know that these opportunities are there. Because even last year, whenever I was going to run for regional president, it kind of started off, oh, yeah, I'm going to, and then dwindled down. I kind of ran out of time, and oh, well. And then 2 days before, she was like, okay, it's still open, do it. And so I was like, okay, sure, I'll go for it. And then just being part of that process, encouraging me in every single step of the way, even whenever I start doubting myself, it's just been a tremendous help in what I'm supposed to do. And also even Miss Huddleston, the one who reached out to me about you, um, she's been an amazing role model, not just in the way that she leads and is able to talk to people and communicate, which I think is definitely amazing because I've never seen somebody get so many students involved. Um, Maybe not easily, but very, very well, and able to get them to be integrated into all of these processes. So, working with those advisors and great adults who are able to push me to do better myself and to start to learn all these things and skills that they have, it's been such a tremendous guiding factor as I work throughout high school.
Yeah, absolutely. I know that Miss Huddleston, for me, I got to interact with her on a yearly basis because of the old one that I used to be a leader in the region for. And I always noticed that she often had some of the best students among the whole region. So I would definitely say that when you find a great coach and a great advisor, it definitely trickles down into the students. So you have great leaders there with you, and you've definitely shown to be such a great student. And I would say probably very much because of your own efforts, but also because you've had great mentors and coaches. Now, can you tell me what do you think was one of the big difference makers in your campaign? What do you think was something that really helped you as you pursued being a state officer? One of the things that you did different, or that you would say to others, if you're going to run for an office spot or an officer spot, you should definitely do this.
I know whenever the beginning of the officer process is just at least for a state officer, because I mean, going back to regional president, which I think will be a little bit more helpful because that was in person. That one I did do it very late, but I already had my resume prepared beforehand, which is something I think you should always have already complete. And then, so a lot of the process was very easy. Once I got there, it was me and another girl running for regional president. And the distinguishing factor was just how I spoke because we gave a speech to all of the voting delegates and talking to them not about what you necessarily want to happen or things that you think you can implement, but talking about what you're actually able to do. Because I think there's a lot of confusion between um, or what different leaders are supposed to do in their roles and how much power they actually have to change certain things. So sometimes they'll say, oh, I want to expand social media, I want to do this. A lot of goals that have already been pushed forward and things that you might not have control over the way that other people think you might have. So it's just to make sure they know this is what I have the availability to do. And now here's what I'm going to do with it. And I think that was a big determining factor in the trust people had in me to do that job because I was just being honest about what I actually have the power to do and not trying to accentuate my abilities beyond what they are. And
Awesome.
so, yeah, that was a big thing.
Yeah, and I think sometimes it even I think would look bad if you do get elected and you made all these promises and they're not even things that you can really do. So it just kind of it's almost like you oversold yourself in the moment.
Yeah, exactly. And I see so many students do that, especially because they think, oh, they probably go online, search up, okay, what can you do as a leader? What are great things to add to your campaign? And I mean, you see it from other speeches because, yes, in their circumstance, those are definitely viable things to do and they will help you. But then if you oversell yourself and then you don't have the capabilities to do that because of your role, then I think you're, yeah, letting people down in that sense. I think it's something to try and stay away from.
Mhm. Now, how did it feel? What was the moment like when you found out that you had gotten to become the president of the state? Well, I'm guessing it was during COVID, so
Mhm.
you probably were looking at a laptop, or did you get to go in person and they only had a few people? How did it work out for you?
So because I was a regional president, in the summer, or it ended up being in November because of COVID, so that got postponed, we went to a camp with other regional presidents. Usually this would be around like 25 people, but this time it was only 13. So it was a pretty small group of people. And it was regional presidents and state officers working together. And we were planning fall leadership, regional leadership, and state leadership conferences for people across the state. And so with that group of people, since we kept it so small, once we went to state, we kept that same small group of people and we were all able to travel over to Dallas. So that was an awesome thing to do. But the night that all of the awards and the officer positions were coming out, I had a flight back home with one of the other girls who lived in my region, and it was only going to be the state officers who were going to stay up in Dallas. So I had to hop on a flight, and we had a connecting flight to Houston. Whenever we stopped in Houston, we knew that the award ceremony was going to start, so we were watching it on our phones, and we had already boarded the plane. And so I was like, okay, this is going to disconnect very soon, so I need them to like hurry up because I knew the scripts that they had. So I was like, okay, they're going to get to it soon, and then I'll find out what it is. Um, so while they were doing that, we were just waiting there watching it and hoping that it wouldn't disconnect. So right before we were about to take off and the plane had already started moving, um, they announced all of the awards. And the other girl next to me, she's also the state historian, wonderful person to work with. I'm so happy I was able to last year and this year. And I was just completely shocked. And even the guy next to us, he was like, guys, so what's happening? Because I was there like crying afterwards. So that was definitely an amazing thing to find out, and I was so happy I was able to before I landed, and it was wonderful.
Well, I'm so glad that that was experienced. And that's probably the most unique story I've ever heard of the finding out that you became the state officer. You sitting side by side with one of the other now state officers. So, was there any screaming? You mentioned crying. Was there some screaming? Did everybody have to
There
turn
was very loud, like, laughing, kind of completely shocked because so this year, the vice president last year also ran again for this year, and it was also, a lot of the other officers, including state officers before, had assumed that she would be president this year. And even me, the entire week while I was there at state, because I kept on hearing this, I was like, okay, I was praying. I was like, okay, I need to be, make sure I'm not going to be jealous. I'm going to like stay centered and not be, because I was like, okay, she probably will. And I kind of accepted that. And so, as after we got that, I was like, "Wait, did they say that?" Like, I had no idea that that was actually going to happen, and so it was a very, shocking thing to find out. So, yes, there was some yelling, a lot of laughing, kind of just, "What? Did that happen?" And
now, how did your family react? How did the other people in your campus locally react? What was that like?
so everybody at my campus now says Madam President whenever I go by. My golf coach just refers to me as that now, and so do a lot of my other teachers, so that's interesting. Um, my parents are like, "Oh, good job, Sophia," and they brought as a joke whenever we were in Houston because we knew that we had made officer positions, we just didn't know which role we were gonna have yet, and so, the other girl, she was talking to her uncle, and he said that he was gonna go, pick her up at the airport and also with her family and bring balloons, and so I was talking to my parents, and I was like, "Oh, you should bring me balloons too." And so they went to the party store nearby and got them right before they came. So I was like, "Oh, thank you guys."
Nice,
But
nice.
mm.
Now, aside from you finding out on the plane and laughing and crying on the plane, what has been one of your other favorite moments in student leadership?
Oh, okay, that's difficult because, um, I mean, just as being an officer, I think the camp was amazing that we go to over the summer. It's a wonderful place where you're able to develop skills about speaking and then also just working with other students and other regional president state officers that you know you're going to work with throughout the year. So it's great to get to know them there after you've already done a few things virtually. And then I think going to the state conference, that was a whole, not a mess because we had a lot of things prepared, but it was also really a mess because it was all virtual, all new things, and having to start doing all these things really quickly. It was just very busy, but it was wonderful. I mean, even afterwards, every night we would kind of have some homework to do because things that we need to prepare for the next day. So we'd all get together and then work on that together. It was just a wonderful experience to have, being able to work with those people after so much time doing it virtually and then transitioning to in person.
Yeah, I think this year has been odd because usually my physical presence, I'm a very large man. Um, and so people, I think on Zoom, they don't necessarily feel like I'm a big guy. And then I meet them in person at events and it's like, oh, you're a lot bigger than I thought you were going to be. It's like, I thought it was well known that I was a big guy. But now, can you tell me how people can find you? Maybe they want to reach out to you. I know I reached out to you on Instagram. Is that where you're most active or what?
Definitely. I think Instagram is where I'll be most active. So I think it's um, SOPHIE_48804. And then I also on email, I think it was the one I sent you. So sophia.4804@gmail.com. That's any way that people can reach out if they ever need help with anything. It's also the same thing for our Texas BPA Instagram. I'm on there always checking the messages or anything that people send. So that's just Texas BPA. And you can find us on Instagram, Facebook. So that's a great way to reach out to us. And if you ever need any advice on how to run, get into student leadership, even working with resumes, I'll help people build those, check them, and see, make sure they have the right information on there. So reach out if anybody needs anything.
Now, I'm also on the executive board for RGV Lead, which is one of the organizations where you mentioned you're an ambassador for. And so we are always trying, this is separate from the normal show, but since you happen to be part of that as well, how has RGV Lead played a big role, or how has it impacted you, made you a better student, or made you think towards your future more? Tell me the effects of being an RGV Lead.
So I think the biggest reason why it is so successful at our school is because of Miss Huddleston. And so just an amazing advisor. Um, and what she's allowed me to do is I go to elementary, junior high, and then even at the high school, doing career fairs, encouraging people to join business, what that entails, what kind of classes we have, what clubs that they can do, and just giving them that same advice that that senior girl gave me whenever I was a freshman. Um, and so working with students to encourage them to do those same things so that they can be student leaders once they get to high school. I've also worked with doing things with the other CTE teachers. So I have something coming up this week where we meet with all the CTE teachers, especially in business, and talk to them about what they're doing right now virtually and how they can improve on what they're doing, what students are liking, what they would want to change, and then coming up in the next few years or few months. So that's another wonderful thing that I've had an opportunity to do with RGV Lead. I think it's a great organization to be a part of, especially working with Ms. Huddleston to do all these things. And then um, I think one big thing in any club that you're doing, it just goes back to that advice, is volunteering for as many things as you can. So, oh, hey, I can help you do that. And I think once people and advisors start to trust you and, oh, okay, they can do that, they start giving you more responsibilities and giving you opportunities that maybe other students won't have because they didn't reach out and try and um, work with the advisors.
Yeah, absolutely love it. I think you just mentioning right now volunteering for things, even if you don't feel like you're necessarily equipped or ready for that opportunity. I think I can see the crosses, and I know that you were at church today. You
Oh,
volunteer at church.
mhm.
But one of the things that we talked about at my church today was the equipping of the leaders or equipping of the saints. We talk about how the model from Christ was that he didn't necessarily pick out people who were already great leaders. He helped them to develop and become leaders. And I think the same thing with us with student leadership. We sometimes need to just go and try to do something, even though we may not already feel like we're skilled and we're not already ready. We will become ready in that moment. And so I think that's awesome advice that you give, and you pass it along to all those students, all the way down to the elementary level. That's amazing.
Yeah, definitely. We work with like fourth grade, little itty bitty tiny people, and they have fun. We would usually do it with the medical students, so they would bring stethoscopes and little heart rate monitors. Students would love doing that. So It was really enjoyable. And I mean, I think that goes back to also, even whenever I'm in BPA and talking to the new regional presidents this year, I'm like, no, just join it. Like, I promise the other state officers, everybody who knows how to do this will show you how to do this. Like, don't be afraid of doing something because you don't know how to do it right now. Because um, I think everybody, or at least most advisors, most officers know that not everybody has the same skill sets, but they want you to be good because they want their organization to do well. So they will help you to be um, have grow to your maximum potential in whatever role they give you.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, tell me, what is your favorite quote as a leader, and how have you applied it to your leadership?
Okay, so it is by C.S. Lewis. I'm going to get my phone so I make sure I say it properly. Why then did God give them free will? Because free will, though it makes evil possible, is the only thing that makes possible any love or goodness or joy worth having. And so I think that goes back into the decisions that you make and how those impact what you're able to do in your future. And so for me, that meant I'm going to use that free will to do positive things, to make positive decisions, and work with the people who I think are best suited, and also following those same goals and values to live that virtuous life and to work towards things like um, showing love to others, greeting others, meeting people, trying to be the best person that I can be individually so that I'm able to help people the best that I can. And so I think although that we have that free will, nothing's ever determined for us, especially once you get into older years of high school, you're getting into college, you now have your own decisions. You're independent from your parents, from other people around you. What are you going to do with that? Is it going to leave a positive impact on your life or a negative one? I think it's your choice, and it's a great thing to have the option to be who you want to be and make good decisions with that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think free will is one of the most powerful things that we get to experience in life is, and then we get to see the results of the choices we make using that free will. So awesome, love it. Now, can you tell us what are some of your college and career plans?
Okay, so, um, okay, in Texas, I want to apply to A&M and UT. Probably not UT. My sister goes there right now, and I think it's just gotten pretty bad with the homeless situation, especially living off campus. I don't know if that would be an environment that I would be suited to. I love the nature and all of the hiking trails and food. It's wonderful there, but I don't think that's a place for me. A&M, my parents, grandparents, uncles, pretty much everybody in my family went there, so that's um, also a great place to be, and I think it's a wonderful university. But I want to get out of that comfort zone and where I could be, even though it is definitely a possibility that I will end up there. And it's a great place to be. So out of state, I'm going to be applying to Notre Dame, MIT, UPenn, and maybe a few others. So
Georgetown. Sorry.
maybe Georgetown. That's definitely an option. And so I'm trying to figure out what I want going there because I think a lot of them in my head is just, oh, that sounds nice. Like I would be fine there. And so I don't know what I want my main goal to be going there because I mean, this is something, well, okay, once people get to know me, they know this is one of my goals in life. I would like to have 10 kids and possibly be like a house mom. So that's definitely something I would be totally open to. And although I'd be also definitely open to having a career and going onto that path, um, I think that just kind of shapes how I'm open to whatever God has in store for me. And I don't know what that motivating factor would be to go to one university as compared to another, considering my goals.
Yeah, absolutely. If you do want to meet any current grad or current students or recent graduates, I have a large network at every one of those schools that you just mentioned. So I would love to connect with people from South Texas who did go to those schools, and they can give you their perspective and see if you like their perspective on a certain campus. So just offering that out there as you begin to think about those plans. Um, Now, this is the part where you get to take the stage. I no longer am the motivational speaker. This is what I get to do all the time. But now I give you my audience. Instead of you giving me the BPA audience to come be your guest, this is you being my guest for my show. And so I'm just going to give you the full floor. I'm going to take myself off the screen in just a moment, and you're going to give us your pep talk, Sophia. So thank you so much for doing this. Sometimes I cut this out completely as its own thing. So you may want to just kind of reintroduce yourself. I introduced you before the show, but they may see this and not necessarily have known who you are. So you just may want to restate who you are. But
Okay, sounds good.
I'm
Just
gonna
let me know when.
on speaker view or let me make you the, and let me mute myself.
Okay, awesome. Hello, my name is Sophia Silva. I'm the Texas BPA state president. I work in different student organizations at my school and in community, like RGV Lead, working with my church to educate students on religious education, and working with multiple organizations to help push forward the goals of supporting others in whatever their career goals are, first off in business, or working with others to promote them to live up to their maximum potential in their life, considering their circumstances. So one wonderful thing is there's a podcast I've been listening to recently called Among the Lilies, and her catchphrase, her title is for those who are tired of pretending and ready to be real. And I think that goes into such a beautiful saying and of what that can be of who you really are. And so sometimes people believe that being who you really are means accepting who you are right now. Is I'm going to be me, I'm going to do whatever I want to do. And a lot of times who you are as a person and present to others isn't who you are on the inside or who you could be at your maximum potential, living your life fully. And so that goes into living as a virtuous life. And I think part of that doesn't have to go back into Christianity or whatever it is that you believe, but it can start with the fundamental values of working towards kindness, generosity, loving others, I think is the biggest part of who you can be as a person. And so what that translates to is whenever you go up to people, talk to them, encourage them, go up and be kind. And I realize so many people don't have that in their life. And so whenever I go up to people, strangers, complete strangers often, and I just love talking to them because I get to know new stories and find out about new things and new people. So whenever I talk to them, they're like, oh, wow. And it's just something that they're not used to because a lot of people aren't willing to go out of their comfort zone to get to know these new people and what they have in store for their lives. But whenever you do, you're able to make tremendous impacts, even though you might not think that you have the necessary intelligence or maybe the kindness, generosity, or even your own maturity. It might not be where it needs to be, but you can still make a tremendous impact in the lives of others, even where you're at. And so I think the starting with where you're at, but then moving forward with that and working towards those goals of loving others, working with them to be kind, to be generous, and to promote what they can be and who they are while working to better yourself. And so I think that goes back to working to be real instead of who you're presenting. I think we talked about earlier, and if you weren't here earlier, then not being this face. And so I talk to people and I ask them, why are they happy? What's good in their life? What's bad in their life? And a lot of the times whenever you ask them, like, how are you doing? Oh, I'm great. It's wonderful. But there's an answer beyond that answer that gets to the core of how they're actually doing in their circumstances at that present moment. And so a lot of the things that make you happy, make you sad, aren't necessarily shared with others, but they can be a great tool to be able to lead others to greater things because sometimes the struggles that you've had in your life can mean something to others because a lot of people are going through the same things. And I know whenever I've had other people say, oh yeah, I struggle with this. And I'm like, oh, wait, I do too. I didn't realize that other people did as well. And so I think it's a tremendous thing to share your story and who you are, to be genuine and confident in who you are and what you can offer, even though you might not be where you want to be right now, and to stop pretending and be real. And so I think that's one big thing, working back to love others, be genuine. You are a person who is able to impact others where you're at right now and can grow to do even more in the future. And so I think that's all I pretty much have to say right here. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much, Sophia. That was an awesome challenge. I love that challenge. It reminded me so much of what one of my professors in college, one of my mentors, one of my coaches, who was also a priest at the university, Father Kemp, would tell us. He would often quote St. Francis of Assisi. And the quote that he would use, and I may butcher it, I may not say it exactly, but it was St. Francis of Assisi would say, I preach the gospel every single day. And when I have to, I use words. So he was using the embodiment of what it meant to be a believer, a follower, showing that his Christian faith. I think the same way when you show that love and compassion as a leader, you're not having to go and just tell them, oh, I'm a leader. You're not having to wear the jacket like you are today with your name on it, with the little placard or the little pin thing. Instead, when you are asking people about their day and actually genuinely caring the way you do, and it just comes out of you, it oozes out of you, Sophia, I would say that you're doing that same type of thing that Saint Francis of Assisi said. You're preaching the gospel of leadership, preaching the gospel of love, and not having to use words exactly. You're showing it just by you actually giving them a kind ear to speak to, and showing the kindness and love. So thank you so much for being a great example. I do want to give you a free gift. So I just have a bunch of these in here in the Rio Grande Valley right now, because the University UTRGV just ordered a bunch of them for 150 student leaders across the valley. So I have a few extra after so I'm going to give Ms. Huddleston one of these books for you, if that's okay.
Oh, awesome.
As well as my book is the sponsor for today's episode. So you people out there, when you get this, you can go to freegiftfromjonathan.com and get a free digital copy of the book. So go to freegiftfromjonathan.com and get a free copy. Again, Sophia today has been an amazing guest. Thank you so much. I think those of you guys that got to listen to this, you learned from Sophia what it is to show love, what it is to have an exciting moment. She had one of the most unique experiences I've ever heard of, her finding out on a plane, crying on a plane, that she found out that she became the state officer. But again, she is a part of so many things. Some of the things that she said earlier today was to join many clubs. She talked about going to conference. So advice that I give to every single student: join the clubs, go to the conferences, find a coach and a mentor. And she has done that so much. So she's been a great example. Thank you so much, Sophia, for being a guest. If we were on stage, I have everybody clapping and making some noise for you. Unfortunately, we don't get to do that today. But again, thank you so much for being a guest. And now I do want to ask, before we leave, this is a new thing. So I told you before that I was going to ask you, what is something that you are struggling with right now as a leader? And how can we work together right now to see if we can come up with some good advice for you?
I think one big thing is time management and trying to work together to maintain a prayer life outside of that, working together to maintain all of those priorities I was saying that people want to have and that truly make them happy, while also working in school, making sure I keep up my rank, keep up my grades, and working with BPA and everything else to try and make sure that those goals are all being accomplished in the ways that they should be, and devoting time to all of them properly according to whatever their role is in my life. So I think that's the main struggle right now.
Let's talk about, so you talk about a prayer moment, right? And since it's Sunday today, we're talking on a Sunday. I feel extra spiritual today. I can see your crosses in the background. Right behind me, this is a Christian organization that I volunteer with. And so, the plaques are up there. Let's just go into it. One of the things that I often coach, and I got this from one of my mentors, on how to maintain the balance, right? We're student leaders, so we're trying to accomplish so much, but we are still human. We're still people of the faith. And so we have to figure out a moment. So one of the things that one of my mentors does, he says, write in a block of time that you are going to do it. So he says 30-minute block. I like to do things in 20-minute blocks. So I try to change it to 20-minute block. So I would suggest, Sophia, find a 20-minute block in the day where it works best for you. I happen to be a morning person. And so things that I try to accomplish that I don't want to get out of, so for me, reading like the Bible or something, it's best if I do it first thing in the morning. So that way I don't feel like I'm too busy to do it later. It's like, okay, I'm giving it the first thing. It's something that I want to influence the rest of my day. I think your prayer life is going to influence the rest of your day, whether you're doing school from home or in person, as a student leader, everywhere you go. So that's something that I think would prime up and set up your day. So I would suggest putting in a 20-minute block in the morning, and just maybe waking up a little bit earlier just to get that prayer time in, for sure.
Definitely, and that sounds good. And I know I've seen there's different YouTubers who talk about that block schedule. Sometimes they even do like 90-minute blocks. So separating into really big chunks of time where pretty much just giving yourself deadlines a lot of times throughout the day. And I think I would love to be a morning person. And I am once I'm awake and going and like talking to people, but I find it very hard like to get out of bed and do all that. So I prefer to just stay up later. So okay, like, and sometimes it does come back to bite me because I'll be like, oh, it's 1 a.m. I did have to study for this. So now I'm here. But I need to start waking up earlier and trying to implement that in that part of my day, because it does usually get to the end of the day and it's like, oh, well, now dang, it's kind of late. I know I have school tomorrow morning. Um, and sometimes it's just that mental power to go, to kind of fight against that. And okay, I'm gonna pray a rosary right now. Like I can do this in 30 minutes. I'm going to do it. And kind of just taking that authority myself and working towards that with God's power and to be able to accomplish those goals.
So can I confess to you where I get my 20-minute instead of 30-minute schedule from? Uh,
Where
in college, Netflix for me had Netflix came out and it used to only be DVDs, and then they began to stream. And one of the first things that came out on Netflix that I binge watched was The Office, and the Office episodes were like 20 minutes. So I would, when I was trying to accomplish getting through it all the first time in college, which is not something I suggest. Do not binge watch. It's not a good idea to do that. But I constantly figured out how can I squeeze in 20 minutes so I can watch an Office episode. So I think to myself, if I could figure out how to move things and manipulate my schedule just so I can watch The Office, more so the case, I should be able to do it when it comes to a prayer life. Um, and so it's just kind of my little encouragement to like, you may also, if you are driven to school, if you ride the bus, maybe that could be a little spot where you, or instead of listening to music, you just turn off the music while you're driving and say like, oh, I'll just squeeze in my 20 minutes right here. So just little suggestions.
I love the office story because that does make a lot of sense. Just if I can do it for something else, then the thing that I want to be most important in my life can be that and fit in there. And so, yeah, I think that's wonderful.
Yeah, and my other room, one of my roommates, he played video games, and he would be like, oh, he would measure time by how long it take him to do one match of Halo. I'm not even sure if that's a cool game anymore, but it was a cool game when I was in college. You looking like no?
I don't know video games.
Okay, okay, good. I thought maybe I just didn't know. Um,
Practically literate in video games.
but again, thank you so much, Sophia. I do encourage you to get your 20-minute block in, and I would love to hear if it works for you. Let me know later and say like, Mr. Medina, I've been doing it, and I've accomplished this much this year, or spent this much time in prayer. So I would encourage you to do so. Um, Thank you so much for being a leader. Thank you so much for taking the time. This goes out to the world, and so sometimes thousands of people see it, sometimes just a few hundred, sometimes just me and my grandma. I'm just kidding. My grandma does not watch my stuff, so not even her. But I do want to thank you again for doing this. I may include some of this in a book later on, so just so you know, I may steal some of the transcription from this and put it in a book. If I do that, I will definitely send you the book so you can get a copy of it too. But you do get one copy of this book right here, Student Leadership Playbook. It was the #1 book on student leadership this past year, according to Amazon ratings and stuff like that. So
Very
thank you so
impressive.
much.
Thank you so much for that. And thank you so much for having me today. I think it's been an awesome thing. I love talking and just getting to know people, even especially interview styles, which is maybe why I do well as a student leader because I love interviews. Um, so I've had a wonderful time. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, you have a wonderful day. Thank you so much. Bye, everyone. Thank you, guys. Go to freegiftfromjonathan.com. And again, go follow Sophia on social media. I'll put her Instagram stuff on this as well. So thank you guys so much. Have a wonderful day. God bless.